Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to continue on with my world of astrology. And this is a really significant event that occurred. And I got to tell you from my perspective what I went through and what it was all about. Not very many people know the true story here. And really, I have a lot of information to back what I'm saying. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be talking about a conference that I spoke at in 2016, and it was an ESAR conference that I was asked to speak at, and I was asked to be on the presidential panel. Now, here is what I want you to know. You guys all have me sized up as to being political. Well, in reality, I'm not. And I'll tell you why. Because, first of all, I never cared about politics. I shouldn't say this, but I didn't vote for so many years because I just really disliked politics because it made people so angry and crazy. I tried to stay away from it as much as possible, but as an astrologer, we are asked to predict the presidents. And I have done so because it used to be really and truly a really big deal astrologically to predict a president. It's like people would come from the press and interview you. It was like the thing to do. And you had to do it. And to me, it pretty much represented that astrology worked. And you know that's my big thing. My big thing is to prove astrology works. And to be honest with you, I'm to the point right now where I know it works. Why do I have to prove it to all these people that won't listen? And they don't listen. They already have it made up in their mind that it's hogwash, as they like to call it, or superstition. Never ever have they studied it that give these most extreme opinions. And why are people so extremely opinionated about this? Would you ever make a strong opinion about anything else that you have no information on? Really, no information. Are you basing it on those columns in the newspaper that used to be? That's ridiculous. You know, half the people that wrote those columns didn't even know astrology. They just made up stuff. I know because I used to write some of them, and I came upon who was really writing the other articles. But that's aside from the point. The point is, to be able to predict a president and get it right validated your astrology. So I was all game for that, right? Because that's been my thing for so long. I'm to the point now where really, if you don't believe it, it's your loss, because astrology absolutely works. I work with it daily with people's lives, and I know and I see. Anyway, getting back to the presidential elections. So I did a video in the spring of 2015. You can go, it's time-stamped and everything. You can go on YouTube. It was when I had a different channel on YouTube, Astrologic, but you can go listen to it. If you go onto YouTube, put in Joni Patry, Vedic Astrology, a king is born. This is 2015 that I did this video. Not knowing what I was really predicting when I made this video. But I thought it was such a significant time because what I was always talking about a lot was the three wise men. The three wise men who were following a star They were astrologers. They were called the Magi, and that actually translates into astrologer. So I tried to figure out what in the world star were they following. And I surmised it's when Jupiter and Venus came together, because they're the brightest, not stars, but they're the brightest objects in space. And when you put them together, it's really bright. This was the basis of this video. And what I first saw was in 2015, in the spring when I did that video, I surmised that they would come together in conjunct in Leo, which is the sign of kings, but on the fixed star Regulus. And this is what I was foreseeing in this video. I was talking about that would happen in the summer months in 2015. So I was talking about this conjunction in Leo because in ancient times, when you put those two bright objects together and in the sign of Leo, that a king would be born. And that was the whole thing that I surmised that the three wise men were following. The Jupiter-Venus conjunction in Leo, conjunct Regulus. So I saw this coming up again. Now, Venus conjuncting Jupiter, as I say in the video, is not rare. It happens once a year because Venus goes through all 12 signs of the zodiac, and at some point it's going to conjunct Jupiter every year. But for it to be in Leo only happens about once every 12 years. Okay, so Jupiter goes through all 12 signs of the zodiac every 12 years. So by the time it comes back to a particular sign, it will take 12 years. But within this time frame, they can come together in Leo, but not exactly on that star Regulus, which is at this point in time around 6 degrees of Leo. And this is where they came together in those summer months of 2015. Well, unbeknown to myself when I made that video, that was the year and the time that Trump came down the escalator announcing that he would be president, that he was going to make a run to be president. And this was June of 2015, June 16th to be exact. And here I am in the springtime saying a king will be born in the summer. I didn't know. I seriously, how would I have known? I was basing it on a conjunction of Venus and Jupiter coming together on the fixed star Regulus. And here's what happens months later. And I'm starting to think, is that what it is? And I remember my friend that was helping me film these videos, because I asked her, she says, oh no, that's crazy. That guy can't be president. And that's what everyone was saying. That's crazy. That, you know, here he is. He's on these ridiculous television shows. And, you know, I can't even remember what the shows were where he was firing people. And, yeah. And everyone thought it was a joke. But I'm thinking, I wonder if this is a joke. So then he's running for president, and you know, everyone thought he was a joke. And then to get back to the conference that I'm invited to, where I'm on the presidential panel. This is an ESAR conference that was held in 2016. I believe it was in September that conference, and it was somewhere in California, close to LA, not too far from LA, but I believe it was closer to Orange County or something, but that was the conference. It was an ESAR conference in September of 2016, and there was a presidential panel of about 13 astrologers. And these were the most well-known astrologers, Western astrologers in the world. Okay, and I was on the panel. It was me and Edith Hathaway that were the only Vedic astrologers at the time on this panel. And I remember at the beginning of the conference, I talked to Ray Merriman and his wife, Antonia, and they will vouch for me, but I told them that Trump would be the next president based on his chart. And they looked at me in surprise and a little bit of horror as well. But actually, I take that back. Ray was kind of excited because he knew I'd be the only one predicting Trump. And he was excited. And between us, Ray is not a fan of Vedic astrology. He's a Western financial astrologer. And yeah, we will hash it out about Vedic versus Western all the time. It gets kind of old. And I always leave and say, why don't you try to learn something new? And I've already, whatever. So he was kind of excited. And I'm on this panel, and I mentioned to a few other people that I thought Trump would win. They looked at me horrified. You know this Trump syndrome thing that's going on right now? It was even worse back then, if you can imagine. When you merely mentioned his name, people's faces went into contortions. And they still do. I don't understand what that's all about. I mean, yeah, I agree with you. He is probably still an egomaniac, and he said a lot of really dumb things, such as, I'm rich, I'm really rich. Well, that really got to people. People really didn't like him bragging. He was a big bragger. And I will say, I think he's changed somewhat in the second term. I think he has a different countenance about him, and you may not think so, but something has changed in him. But he was like over the top before. And to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't really care. All I really cared about was getting that prediction right, because then it made you prove astrology. So I worked like really hard. So everyone came up with this birth time for Hillary Clinton, and they were saying it was right. And it was something like that she was born at 2 a.m. in the morning. And to be honest with you, they were saying that was the time. But then I found out somebody rectified it. Rectification is where you take certain events and certain things in their life and you figure out what time they're born. Let me tell you something right now. I will never, ever take another astrologer's rectification on anyone, because they swore by this time, and I think it gave her a Scorpio ascendant. I'm almost positive. Anyway, everyone was using that time, but I was told it was rectified and it wasn't 100%, so I refused to use that time. And what I did, I have to say I thought it was kind of brilliant, and I'm actually surprised that nobody else did it. Because there was one astrologer, really well known, that was basing this election on George Washington's chart. It's like, what in the world does that have to do with this election? Okay, that's what I'm thinking. And I'm telling you, at this conference, people were so angry about this election. And everyone on that panel said that Hillary Clinton would be the next president. And then it comes to me to give my prediction. And Ray looks at me with a smirk on his face, waiting for me to say it. And I couldn't. I thought, what if? What if I'm wrong? How can all these astrologers be wrong and me be right? You know, let me tell you something. I have Saturn conjunct my sun, And I just always think that people are better than I am. I can't get over this insecurity, but I'm getting there. I am definitely getting there because I was right, but I was so afraid to be wrong. And here's what I actually did. I put up the chart of Hillary Clinton's daughter, Chelsea Clinton, because we had her birth time. And her birthday actually fell on the same day that Hillary Clinton's running mate for vice president, I can't even remember his name, but he had the same birthday as her daughter, Chelsea Clinton. We have her documented birth time from a birth certificate. So looking at her chart, I thought I could tell the future of her mother, whether or not she would be president. And that year, there was a solar eclipse on Chelsea's sun and Hillary Clinton's vice presidential running mate. Now, eclipses are not necessarily a great thing to be happening. But then I thought, well, let me go back the last time that the eclipses fell on her sun, Chelsea Clinton. So I went back in time 18 and a half years prior to that, and it was during the 90s. And it was the exact time that her father, President Bill Clinton, was going through the Monica Lewinsky scandal. That is not good. So here the eclipse is falling on her sun again, and I can't remember her chart exactly, but I remember her sun in some way connected to her moon. And the moon is the mother. I think maybe she was born under a full moon or an opposition. I don't remember, but the moon, it showed from Chelsea Clinton's chart that her mother would not be the president. And I said that. I said, from the looks of this chart, her mother will not win the presidency. So then I went to show Donald Trump's chart. And Donald Trump's chart, I'm going to make another video just showing you both of these charts, I think, or at the end of this one, which I might make it into 2 videos because this is going to be a long one. But let me just tell you what was going on in his chart at the time, why I thought he would win. And it was because that in his chart, he just days after the election, he changed into the Jupiter Mahadasha. So I proceeded to show Donald Trump's chart and how he had all these exceptional aspects. Here, I think I'll put this chart up right now with the transit chart so you can see exactly what I was referring to at this conference while I was on the panel. Let me scoot over here and put up Donald Trump's chart as well as the transit chart for the day of the elections, which were November 8th, 2016. So transiting Jupiter was at around, on that day, around 18 degrees of Virgo. And if you look to Donald Trump's chart, he had a Jupiter return. Transiting Jupiter was getting ready to cross over his natal Jupiter. Then, noting that Donald Trump had that Sun, Rahu, Uranus in his 10th house of career and success, this meant that transiting Jupiter in Virgo would have been casting a trine to his Sun, his Rahu, his Uranus in the 10th house. Now, Jupiter's trinal aspect is 100% in power. And the other thing that was monumental at this time was that days after the election, Donald Trump went into his Jupiter Mahadasha. Anytime you go into a new dasha, everything in your life changes. And this was going into Jupiter. So being in Jupiter's Mahadasha actually accentuated his natal Jupiter and the transit of Jupiter. And those were the main things that I saw going on in his chart that made it look like he was going to win the presidency. And everyone's face became contorted. So I didn't say that Donald Trump was going to win. I just said, look at the positive aspects in this chart. I was too afraid to state it. But my statement was, Hillary Clinton will not win. What does that tell you? But I couldn't say it. I was too frightened. Went home from the conference, thinking about it on the airplane. Actually, it was the LA Times that wanted my prediction at the time. And my prediction I gave to them is that Hillary Clinton will not be president. Did they put it in writing? No. They totally threw it out. And what they said in their article is that 12 astrologers predict that Hillary Clinton will be the next president. And remember, it was all over the news that she was going to win by a landslide. I was thinking, I have to be wrong. But on the way home, on the airplane, I contemplated and contemplated. And I said, you know what? There is absolutely nothing in her chart that says she's going to win the presidency, or her daughter's chart, and everything in Donald Trump's. I'm going to do a video that says he's going to be the next president. Still apprehensive and scared to death. I did it. I did it in October of 2016, that I said Trump would be the next president. And I was still scared the way I said it. So weird the way I was so scared by all these people that hated him. They hated me for saying it. And all I'm trying to do is be an astrologer that makes a correct prediction. Okay, so after he wins the presidency, people come, I mean, my calendar filled up. Everyone that saw that video wanted a reading from me, because I predicted the impossible that nobody else predicted, that he would win. Now, there was a few people, but still. I was on a panel of, I was the 13th. It's kind of interesting. That's kind of the number of the Last Supper. Anyway, interesting. But I kicked myself for not saying it. You know, I need to stand up and say it. So after some time went on, and you know, I said, okay, I did a video before the election saying he'd win. And everyone that watched that video confirmed it. And then some people came and said, she really didn't say it. I did. Come on. So you have to understand. But you know what is so interesting to me is how political astrologers are. And I don't even mean in the political sense. I mean in their organizations. Oh my God. Let me just say this. I was banned from a lot of the conferences after that. That's how politically based they are. But let me continue on. So then the next election comes, 2020, right? That one I wasn't too sure about. And what was going on, I believe at that point in time, was that Rahu was in Taurus, and it was crossing over Trump's 10th house, which Rahu can give a win. Not always. Rahu is considered, it gives but with a price. That's what I always say about Rahu. And I was pretty much not sure and clear about that election. I did note that Joe Biden was in his Jupiter Mahadasha, and his Jupiter was in his 9th house exalted. Pretty good. Pretty good. But then Trump had Rahu in the 10th house, which could have meant he could have won. So I wasn't 100% sure on this one. I wasn't. But I asked in a dream who would be president. And I got a very clear answer. Oh my God, you guys know how my dreams are. So I asked, and I did the Edgar Casey thing. I actually did the whole process where you get a glass of water, you drink half of it, and you say out loud what you want to be answered in your dream. And I said, I want to know who's going to be the president. And when you wake up the next day, you drink the second half of the glass of water and you record your dreams. Well, I didn't even need to do that because in this dream, the voice was so loud and clear, and it said, Trump will be president again. How would you take that when you asked that question before you went to bed right before the elections? I said, okay, my dreams are never wrong. I even told my whole astrology school that I had that dream. And it's funny because years later, I forgot that I had that dream. But in this dream, it said loud and clear, this bold, bolting voice that said, Trump will be president again. I said, okay, dream's never wrong. I made the prediction that Trump would win the presidency in 2020, and I was wrong. And I thought to myself, my dreams are never wrong. How could that be? And I put it to the side for years to come. And here we have Trump running again. And I'm going to tell you what I saw in the chart for this election. That election in 2024, I had absolutely no doubt that he would win based on his chart. None whatsoever. And I boldly did a video on that. I can't even remember what it's called or anything, but it's all here in my YouTube channel. You can find it. Except for that one about a king is born. I had a different YouTube channel at the time, so you just have to go onto YouTube and do a search. Joni, Patry, a king is born. It will come up. All right. Now, I'm going back to putting up the transits for this chart to show you why I was so adamantly sure astrologically. And I want to tell you something. Well, I'll tell you after I made this prediction about how many people, including family members, were so angry at me. I still don't get this Trump derangement syndrome, that's what it's called. I still don't get this. Anyway, here, let's put up the chart of Trump and the election chart for where the planets were for November, and I believe it was November 5th. Here we go. November 5th, 2024. I've done a video on this before, but let me show it to you again. So putting up the chart for Donald Trump, he is in his Jupiter Mahadasha, that's the grand cycle, and he was, during the elections, his cycle was Jupiter-Venus Mahadasha and he moved into Jupiter-Venus September 27th, 2024, and he's in it till May 29th of 2027. So his dasha was Jupiter-Venus. So when you're in a dasha, the transiting planet and the natal planets are more powerful of those dasha lords. So in other words, Jupiter and Venus. So plug in where transiting Jupiter was on that day. It was 25 degrees of Taurus. It's in his 10th house. The 10th house is your work, your career, your social standing, your reputation. Jupiter in the 10th. That really is enough to give him the win, truly. It was at 25 degrees, and not only is Jupiter approaching his sun, almost exactly conjunct his Rahu. Jupiter Rahu is expansion and a win, but Jupiter was aspecting his natal Jupiter. Look at his natal Jupiter, 24 degrees. It was trining it. So here it is, Jupiter's conjunct Rahu in the sun, trining his natal Jupiter, and also opposing his natal moon. Are you kidding me? That is spectacular in and of itself. But on top of that, let's plug in transiting Venus, because that's his dasha lord, his subcycle. Venus on that day, look at it, was 29 degrees of Scorpio, sitting exactly opposed to sun, conjunct his moon. The sun and the moon in a chart are the lights in the most important planets of a chart. So you have benefic Jupiter aspecting the sun and the moon, with Venus, the sublord, aspecting the sun, sitting on opposing the sun exactly, sitting on the moon. This was unbelievable. And I know I said adamantly that he would win this election. But then one of my students, and there was even other things in his chart, but one of my students said, Joni, remember that dream that you had 4 years ago that said Trump will be president again? I had forgotten. I thought, oh my God, you're right. My dreams are never wrong, because that's what I told the class. They are never wrong. That's what the dream meant. So there you go. That was my prediction for this last election. I guess I got over my Saturn conjunct the sun being so insecure. And I was like, I know this time I'm right. Astrologically, has nothing to do whether or not I wanted him to be president, guys. But I know I'm going to get all sorts of hate in this video because of the dislike for Trump. But then again, when I pull up the chart for the United States of America, I've showed you this many times. Maybe I'm going to put it up one more time. Look at this chart for the USA and look at Trump's chart. His Jupiter sits on the United States Saturn. His Mercury sits on the United States Jupiter. You know what? This isn't a bad thing. Yes, we are going to go through hell with everything that's happening. But I said this before in a video, and you know what? I never went back to read any of the comments in that video because I knew they were going to be spewing with hate. And in that video, I said, in hindsight, 20 years from now, we will look back. I'm kind of scared to say this again. But in hindsight, 20 years from now, we will look back and say he was one of the best presidents we ever had. Okay, hate me for it, but I'll tell you what. I was banned from the conferences for years because of this. And I'm sure I lost a lot of clients and a lot of, yeah, I had people cancel their readings with me after all this too. But I'm going to be true to astrology. And I'll tell you something else. Even some people that work for me, some companies, but for promotion, they quit working really hard for me when I predicted the second prediction that Trump would win. And I'm basing it on the astrology. Even that 20 years from now, we'll look back and see the good. No one can see the good right now that hates him, because there's so much about projection onto him and all the gross things that he initially said and who he is. They cannot give that up. But 20 years from now, and let me tell you something else. I've been around for a while. I'll never forget when Ronald Reagan ran for president and won. Same thing. None of you guys were around or remember that. But they hated him almost as much as they hate Trump back then. And said he was horrible and what he did was horrible. And here he broke down the wall in Germany. He did a lot of good. And I remember my mother hated him. I come from a family of Democrats. Let me just tell you, my mom despised Reagan. I think my dad might have voted for him though, but that was like a big contentious thing. He would never tell her. But my point is, looking at the astrology, you can't deny that Trump's Jupiter sits on the United States Saturn in the 10th house. Jupiter is the great benefic. That's what I'm basing this on. And even when Biden was president, Biden's K2, which deals with loss, was sitting on the United States moon at 7 degrees of Aquarius. And during his presidency, transiting Saturn was in Aquarius. So this was not good astrologically for the United States at the time. My religion, my focus is astrology, not these political leaders, not what's going on, but the charts speak for themselves. Look at the charts, everyone. If you're not, you're in denial. And let me just say, I went through a lot of hurt and still am through being true to my astrology, especially with politics. And I don't like politics to this day because it causes so much pain and disruption with families. And what is that all about? Family comes first, the love of our family and our friends. Do you know how many people I've talked to that have lost friends over Donald Trump in the elections? Honestly, what is this? People are nuts when it comes to politics, and I tried to figure out why, and politics really does equate to a religion. It deals with people's beliefs, and it goes way, way back to childhood experiences, why we feel a certain way about certain things and people. It's really a projection. And yes, there are a lot of men that might have something that they really hate about Trump because it's something they might not recognize, but it's there, something that they know deep down that reflects something about them, as well as the women. Every time you have an extreme hatred for something, it's because of something that connects to you early on in your childhood experiences. All the racial judgments and everything connects to something that happened in childhood. And we all have it. if we were somehow attacked or, you know, somehow something dealing with racial prejudice to you, of course you're going to feel the way you do about whoever attacked you early on as a child. And it's bad. A lot of people have gone through some really bad things. I grew up in the 60s. I remember all the prejudice and all the racial things that went on for the black people. It was horrible. And they have a right to feel the way they do. But we have to get over it. All of this stuff with race and prejudice and hatred, especially in politics. And you know, let me just say this. When Trump's done a lot of gross things. It's true. But all political people have. They have to step on people to get to where they want to go. Let me just say this. The nice guy finishes last, right? So this has a lot to do with the politicians. And it's all about control and money. It truly is. But this stuff about, I don't even know if I should go here, about how the Republicans and Trump are like Hitler. Do you realize what Hitler did? Or white supremacists and all of this racist stuff? The thing about Hitler is so extreme. Hitler killed millions of people, gassed them, killed them, murdered people, and killed so many people in World War II. It's not fair to make that assessment. Yeah, maybe he's a bad man. I'm talking about Trump for other things, but not Hitler. It's just so ridiculous. So things are ridiculous and crazy in the world with politics right now. And something's going to blow up. Things are going to happen. But I got to say this. I don't know if I'll be around in 20 years, but in 20 years from now, things will look different. All the nuances and the crazy little things that happened in between are forgotten, just like with Reagan. And for some reason, historically, usually we look back and we see mainly the good. And that goes even when people in our lives pass away and die. We don't focus on the bad that they did, we focus on the good. And that needs to be what we should do currently, not just in 20 years where all the ugliness and stuff happens. So I don't even know if I'm going to put out this video, but if I do, heaven help me, because it is pretty radical. All right, so with all of this, I think I'll close. And this is my world of astrology. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I know you don't have to agree with me on any of this, but just that this is what I went through using astrology and politics and predicting presidents. It's not easy. So with that, I think I'll close. Remember, if you'd like to study with me or learn more about me, go to my websites. galacticcenter.org is my main website. And if you want to study with me, go to my university website, which is universityofvedicastrology.com. Thank you.